It's 6 o'clock now. And I'm not seeing a lot of additional folks joining at the moment. So I'm thinking we go ahead and begin. I'm just doing one last check of the attendees to see how many directors we have. And I see 2. Oh, I see John Weed now joining. Welcome, President Weed.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I have to leave for a 6:30 meeting at Bosca and refinancing authority. So let us, if there's a meeting, let us call it to order.
Okay. All right, President Weed, before we begin, I'd like to just make some very brief housekeeping remarks. Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the ACWD Board of Directors, I would like to welcome the public's participation in this special board meeting. This is a community meeting and a presentation about ACWD's water rate proposals. My name is Ed Stevenson, and I serve as the district's general manager. We do have a quorum of the ACWD board present, so this meeting will be conducted as a special meeting of the board. But members of the public may participate in this special board meeting by either using the Zoom app or by telephone. If you are participating via Zoom, we ask that you mute your microphone unless you're speaking. You may also be placed on mute by the meeting host. The meeting host would unmute participants at the appropriate time when the board is receiving public comments. And in Zoom, you'll be able to view the presentation materials as they're presented to the board and to the public. And at any time, you may submit a question or raise your hand in the Zoom app, and we'll be sure to give you an opportunity to speak at the appropriate time. If you're participating by telephone audio, you can download the presentation slides at the district's website on www.acwd.org. Please put your phone on mute to ensure the best sound quality for everyone. And Zoom allows you to use your dial pad to raise your hand. You dial *6 to mute and unmute yourself and *9 to raise your hand. So people participating by telephone will also be given the opportunity to ask questions and provide input. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. Finally, just a quick preview of the meeting. We'll open our meeting with some formalities since this is a special board meeting. And then staff will make a presentation about water rates and our specific water rate proposal. And then members of the public will then have an opportunity to ask questions, provide input. And we have 3 members of our board present, and we have all of our members of the executive staff team either present or joining shortly.
May I point out Paul Sethi has also signed in?
Okay, great. Thank you, President Weed. And welcome, Vice President Sethi. So that completes my housekeeping remarks. But again, thank you to everyone for attending. So President Weed, you are the ranking officer at this point. You could begin the meeting and call for a roll call.
Yes, let's have a roll call if we might, and then we'll turn it over to staff. And as I noted, I will have to depart shortly in 25 minutes. So thank you.
Okay, I'll call roll call. Director Sethi?
Here.
Acwd? Gunther?
Here.
Plum?
Here.
And Weed.
Here.
Okay, now we have on our agenda, this is an item to allow for the public to provide any sort of comments on the matters of this special board meeting, so related to rates, the rate structure, and so forth. Just as a reminder, we will have opportunities as part of the presentation item for the public to ask questions and provide input. But if there are any comments anyone would like to make, now is a time, an opportunity to do so. And if you would just raise your hand in the Zoom app, that would be fantastic.
Thank you. I would note, although I'm chair, I was originally laid out as a board, as a district presentation to the community for input on the rate structure, and therefore I am allowing staff to take full control of the presentation at this point. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. For Ed Stevenson.
No problem. And I'm not seeing any hands raised in the Zoom app, but just as, again, there'll be other opportunities to ask questions, particularly after you receive information. You can get clarifying answers to some of your questions or any other input that you'd like to make. So with that, I think we'll jump right into agenda item 3, which is our community meeting on our proposed rate increase. And so Mr. Wunderlich has put up the presentation slides here. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. It's great to see and engage with our customers, and we appreciate you being here. So you've met me, General Manager Ed Stevenson, and I also wanted to introduce ACWD's Director of Finance, John Wunderlich, who will also be presenting this evening. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so we've got a lot of material to cover this evening, but we'll try and keep it brief. We really want to try and address those topics of greatest interest to our customers. And so, like I said, we'll try and keep it brief. We have about 16 content slides to present because we want to leave plenty of time for your comments and your questions at the end, because we do value your input. So those topics to be discussed this evening. We'll talk a little bit about ACWD's rate setting process, why rate increases are necessary, and what's ACWD doing to control those costs and be efficient. And we'll talk a bit about ACWD's budget, where those dollars are going, and then the specifics of ACWD's proposed water rates and charges, and also a real brief update on the drought and how it relates to our rates process. And then some additional information, hopefully that's beneficial, about how folks can save money on their water bill, some programs that we offer that can help with that. And then additional information and resources about how you can learn more if interested. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this slide, it's a very general depiction of our rate setting process. Generally, the process involves a series of steps within the process that includes financial analyses and detailed budgeting done by staff, and then a series of public meetings and board workshops to receive input from the board and from you, our customers, along the way. So it's kind of a simplified view of the process, but it's how we got to this evening, the process that we followed with this rate cycle. So we had a series of 5 public financial workshops throughout 2021. And those are in addition to our regular board meetings, where we share information about the details of staff's analyses, our budgeting, the financial modeling that we do, alternatives developed based upon input received by the board and by the public along the way. And as part of that process, we update our long-range capital improvement program and our long-range forecasting and modeling regarding expected expenditures and costs over time. So we really try and project out our financial situation over a long period of time to be as careful as we can with rates. So then we analyze and we try and project current and future water demands and water revenues. And from there, we calculate the revenue and the rates that would be needed to meet the cost of providing water service. And then we evaluated several rate structure options, including special rates intended to be available in the event of a water shortage emergency. And I'll tell you, as the water year developed in our current drought conditions, certainly the prospect of relying on such water shortage related rates became more and more of a reality. But finally, then those alternatives were narrowed and the specific rate proposal was presented to the board and the public. So I should also note, though, that a very similar process to this was conducted back in 2020. And so the 2021 rates process that you see here really built upon much of the analysis and the public input that was provided during the prior cycle too. And ultimately, though, the board elected to forego a rate increase during the prior cycle, so there was no water rate increase last year. Next slide, please. Okay, so why do we need to do rate increases at all? Nobody wants to raise rates, and we're very cognizant of that. The simple answer is that we need the right level of revenue to provide our customers with the best service that we can and a reliable supply of high quality water. And we do that 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So what are some of the key drivers in water rates? So first, a major component of our budget is labor. And this is labor for the professionals that serve our customers every day, either directly or indirectly. And labor, it's a fact of its reality that labor is particularly expensive and costly, particularly in the Bay Area. And like most public agencies, we have labor groups that have a legal right to negotiate their compensation. And we work hard as a team, both management and the board, with labor groups to do what's right for all involved, and keeping in mind our customers' needs for reasonably priced water. A key element of our recently negotiated contracts is shown here. That's the cost of living adjustments, or COLAs. They're shown here for the next three years, ranging from 3.14% to 3.25%. And so while modest, these COLA increases do have a part to play in the cost of water. Of course, another major driver is the cost of capital improvements that are needed to maintain and rehabilitate our water system, and to continually improve water supply reliability and water quality for our customers. So some examples are shown here, including ACWD's participation in a very large regional water storage project in Contra Costa County, and I'll touch on that a bit more in a moment. But also our role improving the resiliency and water quality of the state water project, which is about 40% of our water supply, through the state's Delta Conveyance Project, and other initiatives like watershed protection and proactive efforts to treat emerging contaminants like PFAS. And of course, as new regulatory and environmental requirements evolve, we need to comply with those requirements, and it's often costly to do so. And another area where costs will continue to increase, and in some cases much faster than CPI or cost of living increases, is the cost of water supply. And in the arid West, of course, water is becoming more and more scarce. All of our imported water supply costs are rising, and we expect them to continue to rise significantly over time. And of course, we need to remain financially responsible and have sufficient reserves to maintain services, to pay our debts, and to maintain our excellent AAA bond rating that does save our customers a lot of money when we need to issue debt. Next slide, please. So this slide shows some examples of some of the major projects that we're working on. The first one there in the upper left is our implementation of advanced metering infrastructure throughout our service area. So this is where we upgrade every one of the water meters within our service area, and provide our customers with the ability to track their water use in a much better detail than they can now, get more control over their water use. The project will actually pay for itself over time, but it's costly to begin with. And so that's a major initiative we're working on. Also, on the right-hand side, there's our main renewal and seismic upgrade program. That's a major component of our overall capital improvement program, and it's aimed at constantly improving water service reliability and the resiliency of our water storage and distribution system. And then also down the lower left is our clean energy program, which will reduce our energy consumption and our greenhouse gas footprint and our operating costs by installing over 5 megawatts of clean and renewable solar generation at our facilities. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a little bit more information about that regional water storage project I mentioned earlier. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide unless there are questions, but in general, ACWD is a local agency partner with the Contra Costa Water District and other major water agencies in the region to expand the Los Vaqueros Reservoir. And because of its location adjacent to the State Water Project and between ACWD and the Delta, this reservoir could play an important role in water supply reliability in the event of Delta outages or disruptions in the state water supply, which is a big part of the supply to our agency. It's also connected to a number of water systems, which means a greater potential for exchanges and transfers among partners. Finally, I'm sure you know, water storage in general is increasingly hard to come by and very much needed for water supply resiliency and climate change and drought. And that's something, of course, that we're battling right now. So it's an important initiative. Our board has not decided to move forward with our participation in the ultimate construction and operation, but it's an important part of our capital program as it stands today. Next slide, please. Okay. So what is ACWD doing to keep costs down and to minimize needed water rate increases? So we've provided a number of examples here. And again, I won't spend a lot of time on the details unless there's interest, but in short, we do a number of things, including, we regularly re-optimize the use of our water supply portfolio to maximize the use of the lowest cost water. And that's one of the benefits of having a diverse water supply portfolio that we have. So also I talked about our advanced metering infrastructure project, and that helps to keep pressure on rates down, but it'll also, and most importantly, provide our customers with the ability to closely track and have control over their water use, to spot leaks early and to save money on water bills over time. We also continuously work to increase the energy efficiency of our operations, and that reduces power costs and lessens our overall impact on the environment. And related to that is moving toward a leasing program for our vehicle fleet. And that, again, lowers costs and increases efficiencies. We do leverage our excellent AAA bond rating where we can to refinance existing debt at lower rates and to reduce debt service costs. And that's a process we're actually involved in currently. And we partner with other agencies where we can to implement projects jointly, not only to reduce overall costs of the community, but also minimize other impacts like traffic impacts and paving disruptions. And in a similar way, we partner with other agencies to maximize our collective buying power and secure the lowest costs we can for needed water treatment chemicals and other materials and supplies that we need. Okay, next slide, please. This is something I'm particularly proud of. We've got a very effective team here at ACWD that's very much engaged in this type of work. ACWD has been very aggressive toward securing external funding for projects and programs. And some of the examples are shown here. We've received $21 million in grants and reimbursements over the past 3 years, mostly for projects in Lower Alameda Creek having to do with fish passage for threatened species, but also to provide for continued reliable operation of our major water supply facilities in the corridor. And we expect to receive another about 17 million over the next 3 years as well. Finally here, as I mentioned earlier, our strategic use of debt, which not only saves costs over time, but also spreads those costs out over time, reducing big swings on rates for our customers. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'll turn it over to our Director of Finance, John Wunderlich, who will walk us through where our costs are and where your rate dollars go, as well as review the specific rate proposals that our board will be considering for approval next month. Mr. Wunderlich.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So on this slide, what we show is a snapshot of our budget. Our adopted budget for the coming or the current fiscal year is $156 million, spread out around a number of functions and programs of the district. And kind of our normal way of doing reporting, because this is how the Governmental Accounting Standards Board requires us to do it is by programmatic function. So you see here we have like source of supply, O&M, operations and maintenance, administrative and general costs. And so that's how we report. But we know our customers are also frequently interested in seeing this information presented in different ways. And so that's why we've structured this pie chart so that the shaded area for each section represents the labor component of that section. And so, for example, the green part on the top, operations and maintenance, of course, operations and maintenance pays for the staff who are out in the street repairing broken pipes, the staff who operate our treatment facilities 24/7. And it's a very labor intensive function of the district. And so you see that's mostly shaded. But the source of supply, which is 27% of our total budget, that's mostly cost paid to third-party agencies such as the state of California or the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. So 23% are those third-party costs, while 4% is district staff who are engaged in water supply related activities. And so this is just a quick snapshot of our budget for this current fiscal year. Accordingly, this serves as the baseline for being able to explain where the money associated with the proposed rate increase will go. And so the proposed rate increase would generate about $2.3 million in total additional annual revenue for the district. And breaking it down by these different components, about 39% goes for the labor and benefit costs of the district staff, about 26% toward capital projects, 23% specifically toward third-party water purchases, and then the remaining 12% for O&M. So now here are some of the details on the proposal. First, no increase is proposed to the baseline water consumption charge. Increases are proposed to the service charge, which vary based on the size of the water meter. So most customers have a 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter, and that's a $2.33 increase that's being proposed per bi-monthly bill, or approximately $1.17 per month. The increases are larger for larger meter sizes. And this is the result of a cost allocation study performed by the district's consultant, which is available on our website, and the details of how to access that will be shared later on in the presentation. Okay, so now what does this mean for a customer's typical bill? And so we've broken this chart out between single-family residential and all other types of customers. And so 96% approximately of all single-family residential customers have a 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter, or pay their meter charge based on that size. And so they will see between a $0 to $5 increase. There are approximately 4% of residential customers who have a 1-inch meter. And so those customers would see, if we go back to the prior slide, those customers would see a $6.89 increase. So they're in that second bucket. But then there are not residential customers in these larger buckets. Non-single family residential customers, which primarily consist of master metered apartment buildings as well as commercial complexes, tend to, on average, have larger meter sizes because they need more capacity, and therefore they do pay larger fixed charges and will see larger dollar increases with the rates proposal. And you see more of a spread in the different buckets for those customers. All right, so you may be wondering how our rates compare to other agencies in the region. Each year, we compare ourselves against 30 other water suppliers. Our current rate for a typical residential household, which is 16 units of water. A unit is 100 cubic feet or approximately 748 gallons. So the typical residential home uses 16 units per bi-monthly bill. Combined with the consumption charges in the fixed service charge, that adds up to $130.15 per bi-monthly bill today, and is the 5th lowest of the agencies where we survey here in the Bay Area. Based on the proposed increase, we would jump up above one agency, up to $132.48. You can see that's still well below the median bill. And really, it's something Mr. Stevenson alluded to earlier. I would say the number one factor that allows us to keep really competitive and affordable rates compared to many other suppliers is our diverse water supply portfolio that allows us to select from multiple options and try to keep costs down for our customers. On the leftmost side of these horizontal bars in the darker shaded area represents how much of the bill is the service charge. So our service charge is at the median of these surveyed agencies. All right, so just for a quick drought update, despite significant precipitation during the month of December, the state does continue to be in severe drought conditions. Storage levels do remain low, and our imported water supplies are limited. When we prepared this, we had a 0% allocation from the State Water Project. We got great news earlier today that we're receiving a 15% allocation. Of course, further updates could occur later on in the winter or spring, but for now we have a 15% allocation. And our imported water from San Francisco is also under a water shortage emergency. And so while we are getting water from both of our major sources of imported water, it is constrained. So we do continue to experience limitations, and we do continue to need our customers to do what they can to conserve water.
Excuse me, at this point, I'm going to have to leave and turn the meeting over to Paul Sethi as vice chair for the official meeting that we established, because we have to meet the meetings, the criteria of the Brown Act. So thank you. I wish you well.
Great, thank you, President Weed. Our local conditions also remain dry, and accordingly, the district did declare a water shortage emergency in December with a target to achieve 15% system-wide reduction in water demand. And I'd just like to emphasize this point for just a moment. It's system-wide. There is not a customer by customer allocation where each customer must achieve 15%. Rather, the district has prescribed certain rules, most notably limitations on outdoor landscape watering that are designed to achieve 15% conservation system-wide. Of course, that does come with a significant revenue impact to the district. And so a part of the rates proposal that was sent to the community does include what are called water shortage emergency stage rates, commonly referred to as drought surcharges. The proposed stage 2, based on the rate, is 78.7 cents per billing unit. Now, the way stage rates function is it's an additional charge assessed on water bills during a water shortage emergency only. Typically, there's a schedule of stage rates based on the severity of the drought. So the more severe the drought is, the higher the stage rate would be. And so if you see the notice, if you take a look at the notice the district send out, you'll see a series of proposed rates. What's proposed for implementation is, again, the 78.7 cents per billing unit based on achieving a system-wide reduction of 15%. The term stage references the different stages of the district's water shortage contingency plan. And so accordingly, if the severity of the drought increases or decreases, and we declare a different stage emergency, then a new stage rate would be noticed to the community and implemented. The proposed stage rates are designed to fully offset net revenue losses. So essentially the revenue loss from lower water sales, and then we do account for the savings we would expect to experience as a district based on purchasing lower water supply. And of course, this has been proposed to the community in the Proposition 218 notice that went to all homes. But just like the increase to the service charge that was previously reviewed, all of these changes are contingent on board approval in February. So I did want to take just a moment and talk about the mechanics of how these stage rates would work. They are proposed to work as a charge on each unit of consumption. So if you use more, you pay more. If you use less, you pay less, directly proportional to your level of water use. And here's an example of how it works with the 15% conservation target. So the left part of this graph shows your bill as it is today, adding up to the $130.15. The second column there shows your bill under the proposed baseline rate. So it includes the additional $2.33 in the fixed service charge. And then the third column shows what your bill is if the proposed stage rate is implemented and your water consumption stays the same at 16 units per bill. And so as a result, you would see about a $12.50 increase in your bill. But if you're able to achieve a 15% reduction in your water use due to the lower cost you would pay in your base commodity charges, then your overall bill would stay approximately the same. Not pictured here, though, is if you're able to conserve even more than 15%, say you're able to conserve 25%, then you would be able to see a reduction in your overall bill compared to what you're paying today. But certainly we recognize that we do have many customers who are very water thrifty already, and certainly not every customer would be able to conserve 15%. And so there would definitely be some customers who see an increase and some who see a decrease. But again, those who are very thrifty with their water use do already start out with lower overall bills. Okay, so how can customers save money? We do have an income-based assistance program called Help on Tap. We do require proof of income, and if your income is less than 50% of the area median income or 250% of the federal poverty level, you're eligible for the benefit. 50% of the area median income is approximately $50,000 per year for a household size of 2. The current benefit amount is $35 per bill. And the board will be considering some additional changes to this program at its February meeting. And if you're interested in this program or think you may qualify, I encourage you to visit acwd.org/hot, where you can learn more about the program. The district also, through its conservation program, offers complimentary water checkups and water savings devices. And so if you're interested in that, again, encourage you to contact the district. There's information on our website about these programs. And then what opportunities are there for engagement with the district about this proposal? Of course, we're all here this evening, and this is a great opportunity to provide feedback. Members of the public are, of course, encouraged and welcome to attend our February 10th public hearing. That starts at 6 p.m. Members of the public may participate via Zoom, just like we're doing this evening. And information on accessing that webinar is available at acwd.org/rates. And similar to this evening, there will be a brief staff presentation followed by opportunity for public comment at that public hearing. There's also additional information about the rates proposal at our rates webpage. If you want to see information from the 5 financial workshops that were referenced earlier, that's all available at that webpage. A copy of the formal notice that was sent to everybody in the service area is available. The study prepared by our rates consultant is available, as well as our water rate protest form. So we do have on our website a link to the form to submit a formal protest to the rates proposal. And so again, that's all available at the rates webpage. And that concludes staff's presentation for this evening.
Thanks, Mr. Wunderlich. And so for everyone in attendance, we are here to answer your questions and to receive your input. And so we're really very much interested in that. So if you've got a question for any of us, some input to provide, and like I said, several members of our board are present, it'd be great to hear from you. I think, Mr. Wunderlich, if you could confirm that all we've got to do is unmute ourselves and we can speak up, is that right?
Yeah, this is a regular Zoom meeting, so everybody should be able to unmute themselves and speak up. Just to make sure we don't get multiple people going at the same time. If you can, although not required, if you could use the raise hand feature in Zoom and then you'll be called on in the order you raise your hand, just to make
Because
sure.
I can't raise my hand here.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and have you go first then?
Right, Litfi, it sounded like you might not be able to access the raise your hand feature. So I believe you're unmuted, and I think you can just go ahead and ask any question that you have or provide any input that you have.
Oh, is that me? Is that me? You heard me?
Yes, yeah, we heard you. Yeah.
Great. Super. I'm sorry. I'm so new to this. It's unbelievable.
No
Forgive-
problem.
I have several questions, so I need to know what my limit is, really. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing under certain, I read some articles, and it looks like Fremont here is going to get about 5,200 units in here. And I'm wondering why the increase when you guys are going to have a surcharge, right, to their property taxes or fees. Why do you need to raise rates on us?
That's a
A lot of housing in it, a lot of high density housing. You're getting in all of those high density, you're going to charge them a service fee.
yeah.
That's of the water.
Sure, it's a fair question, and so I can start out, and if there are others that would like to chime in, that's fine. But in general, there's a few principles that apply, and so at ACWD, job one is that new development pays for itself.
Right.
And so that means, if additional water supplies are required in order to provide service to that development, then that development is responsible and it's going to bear the burden of those costs. But there are other things that apply too, right? And one is that ACWD, while we're not the land planning organization or agency, so we are a service organization, and so but that doesn't mean that we don't coordinate closely with the jurisdictions that are the land planners, right? The cities and municipalities within our service area. And you mentioned the city of Fremont. So we work really, really closely with the cities in our planning. And so, you mentioned, maybe 5,200 units there. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of development going on, and there has been for a number of years, right? Probably if you're a resident of Fremont or in the area, you've seen a whole lot that's happened over the last several years. Yeah. And so we work closely with the land planning authorities to understand what's planned, what's approved, what's possible, and factor that into our long-term water supply planning. One of the things to note is, there are a lot of units still coming, as you point out. While they are included in our overall long-term water supply planning, those units actually won't come, it won't be a factor from a water supply standpoint for quite some time. It takes some years to build those units and before they go online and they start, say, using water service. But that's not to say that ultimately, they won't be a factor in terms of water supply, of course. And so we try and factor those projections for that future demand into our water supply projections. And one of the things that we do find is that new development, much of the new development that's happening in our service area, actually virtually all of it, is redevelopment of some prior land use. And what we find is that new development that occurs within our service area is extremely water efficient. They must meet new codes. They must meet our own requirements related to how water service is delivered and configured and so forth. So they are very water efficient, and in many cases they're actually more water efficient than what was there before, like the land use that they're replacing. So there's it's not a simple response. There's a lot of tendrils and factors involved, but they are all considered in our water supply planning.
Okay. Tell me when to shut up and I'll do that.
I think you have the floor right now.
Oh, do I? Great. Okay. Okay, so in my thinking, it seems like the service charge is increasing to make up water consumption shortage, right?
So I'll let others chime in too, but the service charge you're right to point out that the rate proposal is really focused on the fixed charge or the service charge side of the bill. And it's not necessarily to make up for a water use reduction or anything like that. It's just there are lots and lots of different combinations of how revenue is collected. And there's a lot of factors that go into that collection of water revenue. And really, frankly, the service charge is, as you saw in an earlier table in the presentation, it's really focused on the capacity of the meter, right? So the larger the meter size you have, the greater the service charge, except for different customer classes like residential and so forth. So, so it's really focused on a number of factors. And in large part, it reflects sort of the fixed cost for providing water service. That's clearly not the only factor, but that's one of the factors that's involved. And so one of the things that our board always needs to grapple with is the allocation of overall revenue that comes from the fixed side of the bill and the variable side of the bill. And it's always, there's a lot of factors that come into play, and it's always a difficult choice and a difficult approach to confirm in which direction needs to be taken. But
Right.
you know, that overall fixed revenue stream to the agency is really important. I mean, we are highly capitalized, we have high fixed costs, and so that's clearly a big part of our operating costs.
Yeah, because I see that on my taxes that I pay you an annual fee already. Here on my Alameda County taxes. And I pay the Alameda County Water a certain percentage. And then I get a service fee on top of that. And I get rate increase. And then I got water usage. So there's 3 different ways I'm getting, you know.
Yeah.
I'm getting feed to death kind of thing, you know.
Mr. Stevenson, may I provide some input as a board member?
You're welcome to do that,
Okay,
President Sethi.
Mr. Litvi,
Yeah, it's Phil Miller. I'm Phil Miller.
Phil Mill, okay. So we appreciate your comments, and so I just want to offer some clarification.
Sure.
So on the property tax bill, there is an ad valorem charge, which is historically been on the property tax bill going back to the 1960s to pay for our participation in the state water project. So we are responsible for 4% of all the costs of the state water project from Lake Oroville up north all the way down south to San Diego. So in order to receive water from the state water project, we are supporting all the maintenance and operational costs. And that's just part of the charge. There is another charge on the property tax bill, which is called the clean water fee. That is not from the water district. That is from the city of Fremont. And each city in the county has a clean water fee that they have been charging going back to the passage of one of the propositions from the early 90s. So that is not a charge of the water district. In reference to the service charge, and I have asked in the Finance Committee for a review of how we apply language to that and whether we should offer clarification on the water bill as do other water districts. So historically, if you look back decades, the service charge was for the meter reader to come to your house, read the meter. But in actuality, if you look at the cost of the water district, 80 to 85% of the water district costs are fixed. And the only variable charges are for the cost of purchasing water, chemicals, and electricity. So the fixed charges are really what is reflected in the service charge. And remember that in a normal year, about 60% of our water is imported. Typically 40% from a few hundred miles away at Lake Oroville, and another 250 miles away at Hatch from San Francisco. And San Francisco water is the most expensive water in the state of California, the purest too. But those are the things that we're paying for. And when we go through a drought, where the other 40% we rely on is from Alameda Creek and the diversion into our quarried lakes that filters down, percolates down into our underground aquifer, we also have to be very careful about the management of that water during a drought, because that's our critical backbone. So I just wanted to highlight, there's a lot of factors that go into that service charge, and we probably could do a better job of explaining that, in my opinion, and I'm going to work on that. So thank you for your time and contribution to the conversation.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I might provide a little additional context as well. You referenced a few different charges. The total amount the district collects from that state water override tax on the tax bill is about $6 to $7 million per year. The total amount collected through water bills is about $120 million per year. So that's that property tax assessment is recovering a share of what we pay for our state water contract. It is a relatively small amount of the overall cost of operating the district, though. I think
Carol sitting waiting patiently. It hurt.
Yeah, so I thought it might be appropriate. Carol has her hand up. Why don't you go ahead and the floor is yours.
This is probably a really simple question, but I don't quite understand. If I use X amount of water per year, what does the size of the meter have to do with the amount of water I use? I'm going to use, so many gallons, regardless of what size meter I have. Is that question a logical question?
Yeah, I think it's a logical question, and I'll see if Mr. Wunderlich would like to take a first run at that answer.
Sure, I'll take a first run. So whenever somebody applies for water service, when you're going through a new development, typically what happens is you are given the smallest size meter that's determined large enough to meet the needs of that water service connection. And essentially what the meter size really is it's a proxy for the amount of demand a customer can place on the water system. And within kind of the industry standards for rate setting, it is standard to allocate a share of costs based on meter size. And so certainly we understand that some customers, and let me go back to that slide. Here we go. We certainly understand that there are some customers, say with a 3/4 inch meter, who may only use 8 units of water per billing cycle, and other customers with a 3/4 inch meter who may use 25 units of water per billing cycle. So absolutely, the amount of some consumption can vary regardless of the meter size. But it's a way, as has been alluded to a couple of times, about 75% of our costs of operating the system are fixed, and establishing a fixed service charge is a way to try to bring some stability to the district's revenue so we can maintain efficient service.
Director Sethi here. I will also add, Carol, that we're the first and oldest county water district in the state of California, and we were formed 108 years ago, before the 3 cities were formed. And as part of our charter, fire protection for the community is a major effort of the water district. And so the size of the meter also reflects the demand that would be required to protect an owner's property in the event of a fire. So it's part of the insurance on your property, and it also lends value to your property in the long run.
Well, I thought I understand that my insurance rates are based partially on how close I am to a fire hydrant or how close I am to a fire station. But I didn't understand that something like the size of the meter rather than the amount of water I use was playing into this.
Well, if you have a very large custom home in the hills, it's going to require a lot more water pressure and delivery of water to put out a fire. That's basically what it is.
Okay, well, I appreciate your answer. And I have one other question. What's going to happen to the meter readers now that you're putting in these automated systems?
Yeah, so they're in my department, so I'll go ahead and take that question. Essentially, those positions are being phased out of the district, and all of the staff currently in those positions are in what we call defined term positions, meaning when we offered employment to these employees, it was for a defined period of time.
How many are there? How many meter readers or people impacted by this change are there?
Currently, there are 5.
Okay,
And I will
that's all
point
the
out,
questions I have.
thank you for those questions, Carol. And I'll also point out that, the AMI program really is a bit of a shift in how, we do a major part of our business, right? We, on the water registration side and metering and measuring that water. And so, we would phase out the older approach to doing that, which is, literally walking from water meter to water meter 68,000 times, or 68,000 different water meters in our service area every 2 months, and replace it with a more efficient process. But that more efficient process doesn't mean that it doesn't need people to support it. And so, part of the overall approach, as Mr. Wunderlich points out, the existing meter readers are it's part of their, as part of what they signed up for and they agreed to as part of the defined term program, because we know that particular functionality is being phased out. But we also need to be sure that we're supporting that system and that we're supporting our customers in the future. So part of that, part of those positions are, shifting over to a different type of support for our customers. And so it doesn't mean, mass layoffs, but it also does mean that we're trying to operate in the most efficient way that we can.
So the skill set from meter readers can transfer over to this other function that you're talking about?
Well, for these
How
particular positions, they're not
administrative or
transferring over, but some of the skill sets for meter readers do transfer over to other ways of supporting our customers and diagnosing problems with their service and so forth. These aren't things that are entirely different.
Yeah, we actually had one person in a defined term meter reader position who just moved into a position in our customer service unit. And there's a lot of, kind of correlation between those activities.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions.
All right, Mr. Miller, I see your hand.
Okay, I was going to address that too, the advanced metering infrastructure. I find that to be forgive me, but I find it as an invasion of my privacy. I really don't want you to look at my watering and how I'm watering or what I'm doing. I know you're saying, hey, look, customers, this is for you. You can meter, you could go online and regulate your water consumption and all this other stuff. I really don't. I really don't. I looked at it and I read something here in your article right here that stated that not only do we have we can water it, you can too. And then if there's a drought situation or whatever situation, I'm using too much water, whatever, you can now identify it and say, hey, Phil, you're using too much water. We can shut you down, do whatever we want to do. I find this kind of an invasion of privacy. Kind of like PG&E when they did this meter that they use, because they can identify. I said, my bill's too high. And they said, okay, well, in your back room, in the back corner right there, that's where your heater's going. And I was like, wow, how in the world do you know that? I'm thinking that the water company is going to do the same to me.
Right. Well, we don't really have a lot of interest in spying on you. Really, the benefit, the real value is, as you point out, right? It's the ability to find, because right now you really don't have a way of determining really how much water is being used at any time. It's something going wrong, and really you only see data from us every 2 months, and it's a snapshot, right? And so you have something could have happened 59 days ago that you would simply have no idea about. And from our standpoint, pardon me, we're motivated because water is a precious resource, and we don't want water not going to a beneficial use. And it's not free, and you've got to pay for that water. And so we see it as a mutual benefit to be able to have that data available for you. It is encrypted, it is locked down. We don't share it with anybody else. Yes, we would use data, aggregated data for our own operations to make sure that our own operations are as efficient as possible, that we're detecting leaks in our own system, that we are managing how we move water around in our system in a way that is as efficient as we can. And, as it stands right now, we're kind of in the same boat as you in terms of that detailed water consumption information at the end point of our system, because we don't have data other than, one data point every 2 months. So yeah, I can totally understand the concern. It's not our objective to spy on you. And we do take certainly data security and data privacy very seriously. I will tell you that, and some of the folks that are on the line here are going to get tired of hearing me say this, but as an agency, we're preparing to roll AMI out. We wanted to make sure that we were working out all the bugs in the process, right? The installation process, the notifications, make sure that the people who are doing the work are equipped to deal with whatever situation. So we went through a few test installations. And so I was an early guinea pig for AMI.
Okay.
And so I have, I think, one of the 5 first AMI installations in our service area. And I will tell you, because I'm a customer here too, and as a customer that had AMI installed on my water service as part of that guinea pig operation, I had it in there for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden I got an alert that said, hey, you've got a really odd, and it was just kind of just based upon the data, you've got a really odd water usage at these wee hours of the morning, and there's this very, very low water use pattern. And it, like I said, it started at some hour of the morning when nobody's going to be around. And so I could kind of look at it and say, oh, that might have something to do with the irrigation service. And back then we were still irrigating, landscaping, and we're not doing that anymore. But that was a early indicator that allowed me just to simply go out and look at my irrigation control valve and find that there was a very, very tiny little trickle of water leaking through the valve into the irrigation system. So I would have never seen it. There's no water pooling anywhere, dripping anywhere. But I'm paying for that water.
Yeah.
And also from an overall water use standpoint, that water is not going to any beneficial use, right? That's just wasted water for me as the customer. It's wasted water that ACWD acquired, treated, stored, and distributed, and it's not doing anybody any good. And so, from an overall water operation standpoint and from a customer standpoint, it's something I think will be very beneficial. It's something that I found as a customer to be really, really beneficial.
Mr. Stevenson, Director Sethi here.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a correction and supplement what I was talking about earlier. First of all, we pay 1% of all the cost on the state water project, not 4%. 4% is what we pay on the Hetch Hetchy system. And while most of our community was not aware of it, over the last decade, we tore down and rebuilt Calaveras Reservoir over in the Sunol region. That was close to $1 billion cost. And so we have to pay our fair share of that. And on top of that, the rest of the Hetch Hetchy system all the way back to Yosemite. So it's not an inconsequential cost for the water district, and that is the most expensive water that we pay for. It's pure, it's extremely soft, so it offers a lot of benefits to our community. But while I'm on this topic, I also wanted to talk about infrastructure. That's how I view my service charge. We have 900 miles of pipeline in the district, in the Tri-City area. We are bringing in water all the way from Oroville and from Yosemite. And we have our own reservoirs and distribution system and water purification plants that were largely built from the 1930s through the 1980s on the back of property taxes from the local communities. And those were retired a long time ago. And now it's like repainting the Golden Gate Bridge. You start at one end and you finish at the other. You have to start all over again. And we have a distribution system that is very vulnerable to a major earthquake on the Hayward Fault. It runs right through our service community. And most 2/3 of our homes in the Tri-City area are in a liquefaction zone, which means that the sewer and water distribution pipes underground are very likely to crumble apart, break. We can lose water pressure very quickly in the system. And it's a major nightmare for the entire Tri-City area, which is one reason this board has decided to spend the money to upgrade as much pipeline as we can each year, especially the backbone spine, what we call the spine of the system, the major pipelines that run through our network. So we just completed a 5-mile project on Niles Alvarado Road, and we're starting on another one on Driscoll Road right now. But this has been a continuous effort by the district over the last year. And that's our worst nightmare, is a major quake on the Hayward Fault. The last quake occurred in 1868, and that's 154 years ago. The average periodicity of a major quake 7.0 or greater on the Hayward Fault is every 90 to 165 years, if you look out over a couple of millennia of history. And so the average is 140 or something. We're past the average. We're getting close to the maximum. And it is considered the highest threat fault in the nation by USGS. So those are the things that we worry about in trying to protect our customers. And I grew up here in the community. I'm a native. So I take this very seriously, what happens in the event of an earthquake. Thank you for listening to me.
Sure.
Mr. Miller, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
I've got somebody else with a hand raised, and
I'm sorry.
we'll certainly come back to you. All right. I
I'm
see,
sorry.
Na Lu, I see you've got your hand raised. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all the information you provided. And also thank you. What I don't know, I forgot your name, but what you just described about the earthquake was really scary. Thank you for upgrading all the pipes. That's really important. I'm also new to this rate increase, so I want to understand to make sure that my understanding is correct. So my understanding is that the service charge will be increased, like for 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter, it will be an increase of $2.33 per bi-monthly bill. But for the consumption charge, effective March 1st, the rate is not going to change. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what you said for the bi-monthly service charge is correct. It's going up $2.33 for the 5/8 and 3/4 inch meter. Our current consumption charge is $4.59.6 per billing unit, which is 100 cubic feet or approximately 748 gallons. You're correct, that is also not changing. But let me advance just a little bit here to this slide with the drought update. Because of the drought and the situation we're in with the drought and the conservation we need, we have proposed to add a new surcharge per unit of consumption that would be 78.7 cents per billing unit. So if that is implemented, that would be based on how much water you use, and that would be a new charge per unit of water.
So is this a decision to be made by the board or?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is what's been proposed, and kind of the way the rules work for us as established by the state of California is we're required to send a notice to everyone in the community of our proposal. And so we did that in December. We sent out that notice. And then 45 days later at a public hearing, the board can then determine what it's going to do. And so that's, again, let me get to that appropriate slide. So at this February 10th public hearing, the board will again hear public comment and then consider what to do. And then the way it works is what was included in the notice is the maximum the board may do. But they can also do less or nothing at all.
Okay, I got you. So as for that the target reduction of 15%, what does that have to do with the rate increase?
Yeah, so let me come back to this. This might be an appropriate slide to show. You see we're the one kind of in the red or maroon type color there. For a typical customer using 16 units, they're paying a service charge of about $56 on their normal monthly bill. And then they're paying another $76 in consumption charges. If customers conserve as requested, then the amount of revenue the district receives will go down. And most of our costs are fixed. And so financially, it would be very challenging for us to maintain reliable ongoing service with that kind of reduction in our revenue. And so that's why we have proposed the surcharge.
Okay, I got you. Thank you very much for the information.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Wendelich, this
Mhm.
is Wong. I think we need to have a little bit clarification here, just based on what I heard from our customers. I think we should just make clear that there's actually two separate rate increases in this 218. One is our, what I would call our normal annual rate increase, which the current 218 is going to place all the increase on fixed charges, on service charge. And then there's a second rate increase that we call a stage rate that will go into effect in a drought emergency. In this particular case, state of California is asking statewide for the water district to conserve 15%. And if we conserve 15%, that would also mean we'll have a revenue shortage rate. And that's where the stage rate goes in, where we're going to recover that cost, or the proposal is to recover that cost based on per unit of water use, which has nothing to do with a service charge. So the 15% target is actually set by the state that we are trying to comply with. But because of that conservation, there is a financial impact to us. So I think, Mr. Wendelich, what we need to clarify is now that we say we are proposing a stage rate, when would that stage rate go into effect since we're in a drought emergency already?
Yeah, so the proposal is that it goes into effect March 1st. And so I guess, yeah, we did not include that date, but at this hearing, February 10th, the board will be considering those rates. that we've talked about, as far as the service charge as well as the stage rates, and anything that's approved would go into effect at the earliest March 1st.
Thank you. I hope I did not muddy the water, but I thought the conversation and the question I'm hearing seems to have a little bit muddy, really great line between the stage rate, which is totally per unit based and is triggered by the route, versus our normal rate increase, which is what we usually discuss every year. Thank you.
Mr. Wunderlich, let me try to build on what Director Wong is saying here, because I need clarification. Are these two separate votes by the board, one on the standard rate increase, another on the drought emergency rates, the stage rates?
So it can be as many votes as the board wants it to be, I guess is the way to say it, based on what the interest is. So as staff, we are preparing for the board to break this off in a number of different sections, and we're anticipating that there may be interest by the board to vote. So I guess let me just back up. Everything could be done in one vote. But as staff, we are anticipating that different board members may have different perspectives on different elements of these proposals. So we will be prepared for the board to take a different vote on the service charge increase, separate from the vote on the stage rates.
Yes, and second question, my understanding was from our previous workshops that if we adopted a stage rate schedule, that it would only go into effect when we declared an emergency for our service area.
Yes, and because we declared an emergency in December, the Prop 218 notice served as notification that those stage rates based on 15% conservation could be implemented March 1st. Again, the actual implementation and approval of that is still up to a board decision at that February meeting.
Yes, so we could certainly delay the implementation of stage rates.
Yeah, so that would be one action the board could elect to take in February. It could approve the stage rates as far as incorporating them into the district's rate and fee schedule, but then decline to impose them at this time. And then should the drought worsen or the board otherwise determine that it's necessary to implement them, then we could later provide a 30-day notice to the community of implementation of the stage rate.
Thank you. You're reaffirming my understanding, and I think we need to clarify this for the community in our upcoming meetings. Thank you.
All right, I see Mr. Nishimura has his hand raised.
Thank you. I have several comments regarding the material presented tonight. While I understand the need to keep up with rising costs, I do object to the decision to foist the entire general rate increase on the fixed charge component of the bill. Doing so disproportionately impacts efficient water users, many of whom are in the lower or fixed income groups. The proposed rate structure not only penalizes those who have heeded the call to save water, but also subsidizes profligate water users at the expense of those who use water responsibly, and sends the wrong message about the value of water, especially when you have justified this rate increase in part due to the rising costs of procuring water. The drought surcharge or stage rate is predicated on the need to stabilize revenue in the face of anticipated decrease in the volume of water sold as customers react to the statewide mandate to reduce consumption by 15%. The magnitude of the stage rate surcharge appears to be neutral for the prototypical average residential customer who manages a 15% reduction. However, looking at historical consumption in the early parts of the drought, there's a significant chance that the district will fall short of the 15% goal as the year progresses. If that happens, the district will collect more revenue than expected. How will the district deal with this excess revenue, which is above and beyond the required revenues as stated in the cost of service analysis? Finally, it appears that the comparison of ACWD rates with other agencies shown on slide 13 of this presentation do not include the impact of the proposed stage rates. How does ACWD compare when the impacted proposed stage rates are included? As the proposal in the table includes both the general rate increase and the stage rates, isn't it a bit duplicitous to show a graphic which only includes the general rate increase? It seems that ACWD would jump several positions up on the chart. Finally, regarding the question brought forth by the commenter, I believe her name was Carol, I note that part of the proposed modification to the rates include a decrease to the service charges applicable for private fire services. This reduction is quite dramatic for small meters, dropping from $71.01 to $7.93 per billing cycle. I also believe that the district has taken steps to remove the excess service charge imposed on a residential customer who, due solely to the installation of a mandated fire protection system, has a meter larger than would be required for uses other than fire protection. In other words, you are no longer penalized for having a larger meter solely due to having a required fire sprinkler in your home. Is that correct? Thank you.
All right, there are, Mr. Nishimura, a lot of questions in there, and I will do my best, but I'm pretty sure I've already forgotten one or two of them. So if you can help me out with the ones I missed. In regard to the question about residential customers who have one line that serves both a fire sprinkler system in their home as well as their regular domestic water use. You're correct. That was a policy change made several years ago by the district that we bill those customers based on the size meter they would need absent the fire sprinkler system. So that's, you're remembering that correctly. And so we have a lot of customers with a 1-inch meter who pay the 3/4 inch rate because that 1-inch meter is only needed to address the flow needs for their fire sprinkler system. In some communities, that's a 1.5-inch meter, and they're paying either a 3/4 or 1-inch meter rate based on the size meter they would need without that sprinkler system. So you have that correct. In regard to the updates to our fire sprinkler or dedicated fire service lines, those are lines that only serve a fire sprinkler system. They are not applicable to single-family residential customers. Those are for multifamily residential complexes as well as commercial complexes. And yes, the rate for the small lines is going down. The rate for the larger lines, though, is going up. On the balance, it is a slight reduction in the revenues related to that. I think overall it results in about a 200,000, working off memory, I think about a $200,000 reduction in revenue. The specific details behind those calculations are included in the consultant study that's on the webpage. All right, I will get to this question next. If you add the $12.59 for the amount you would pay at 16 units for a stage rate surcharge, that would bump us up a few slots here. I did specifically think about the comment you made in terms of whether that should be included within this graphic. And there are really two reasons why it's not included. The first and by far most important reason is due to the current drought emergency, it is our sincere hope that customers will conserve and will continue to pay approximately the same amount. So we're not assessing that stage rate with the goal of achieving additional revenue. And the second reason, of course, is we did do this analysis over this past summer. I'll acknowledge we have not updated it since the summer, but I would imagine that we are not the only agency who is considering or implementing some level of surcharge. But I acknowledge we have not done a comprehensive review or look at all these agencies to do that evaluation. Now, I'm pretty sure I've missed an initial question or two, so if you could help me out.
Well, I think you got 3 out of 4. The first question that I asked is the hypothetical, right, is that the stage rates are sized such that if the district were to sell 15% less water in response to the state request, then the magnitude of the stage rate is such that the district will be made whole. However, looking at the historical consumption, and especially in the early parts of the drought, there's a significant chance that the district will fall short of that goal. If that happens, the district will collect more revenue than is expected. How will the district deal with this excess revenue, which is above and beyond the required revenue as stated in the cost of service analysis?
Great, yes, I remember it now. So so what will happen is so the district does not make a profit. We're a public agency. We don't have shareholders. That money is not distributed to a shareholder as a dividend. So what happens when we have additional funding that comes in is when we next go through a rate cycle, we are starting with a higher balance. And so typically what it means is future rate increases will be lower. And so, for example, over some recent years, we have had over some recent years, we have had stronger financial results than projected. And that was a big part of why the district was able to forgo a rate increase last year and maintain its financial standing. And so any additional revenue, although I hope we would not have additional revenue, I hope we would achieve the conservation. But if we did, it would essentially be used to reduce future rate increases.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I see Na Lu with your hand up.
Oh, I forgot to actually put it down. Sorry about that.
No problem. Then I think I would ask Mr. Miller if you have additional questions.
Sure, I do. I was thinking about when you implement the new valve, right? Then you're going to be using you're going to have to connect my pipe, which I'm liable for. So is there any insurance policies if those guys mess up my pipe, they're going to have to fix it?
Yeah, I can tell you, you're talking again about the advanced metering infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going back to that, sure.
Yeah, for sure. The work that we'll actually do on the water service that serves your home is going to be not very intensive work. We're going to be swapping out the meter and replacing the meter box lid and so forth. So it's pretty routine work that's done all the time. Does that mean that nothing could go wrong? No. There are 68,000 service connections in our service area, and many of them are in pretty bad shape. And just things happen. So, as part of the project, if we cause a problem with your service, then we'll fix it. And one of the things that the contractor does when they're assessing each water service location is they'll try and get a good feeling for what the condition of that private side pipe, the pipe on your side, is in. And so if they already see a big problem with that private side pipe on your side of the meter, then part of the process is to contact you and alert you to that and work out an approach to getting the meter replaced without causing an issue. But if no prior issue is detected and our contractor does somehow cause a problem with your on-site water pipe, then we'll take care of that. We'll work with you on it. But it probably does mean that there's an issue with your on-site pipe. Our intent is not to go around finding lots of issues on our customers' on-site piping, but it's possible, right? We have lots and lots of services in our service area. We do partner with an organization called HomeServe to provide for insurance for that on-site pipeline. And you probably have seen, mailings and other information from HomeServe. And that does allow you to basically insure and protect that on-site pipe that is your responsibility, and it is something that you would be responsible for if you have a failure due to roots or just the aging of the pipe and so forth. But so that is available as a way to protect yourself, not from the project, but just on an ongoing basis. And we've had a lot of customers say, that they're very, very pleased with that service.
Okay.
By the way, Mr. Miller, I had a note sent to me to say I screwed up on a number. I said, I think I said 68,000 service connections. It's 86,000.
Oh, okay. Let's go to that insurance. I have a couple more, but in that insurance bill, you know, you guys are getting 10% of the take too, right? I mean, fine.
Yeah, we do receive a portion. We do receive some revenue from that. Yes.
I heard 10%.
I'm not sure on the exact percentage. I believe we receive somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $75,000 a year total.
Mr. Miller?
Are you using that? Yeah.
As you saw earlier in the presentation, we have a program called Help on Tap. And under Prop 218, we are not allowed to subsidize low-income residents in our community. That was prohibited in the early 1990s. And so the only way that we can offer a discount or help people out on the shorter end of our community is through what are called non-water revenues that are received by the water district. When we adopted the Home Serve program, we recognized that this 10% or whatever it is goes toward that program. This is part of our non-water revenues that we can use by law to help support those that are in need in our community.
Oh,
And we have other non-water revenues, like we lease out cell phone towers and late bill payments, fines. It all goes toward that program. So it has a beneficial use. It's not going into anybody's pockets.
that's good to know. And can we go back, please, if you don't mind? Mr. Sethi, going back to your earthquake, when you were talking about the earthquakes, remember that conversation? I would like to know, is there any, you're worried about pipes breaking, and the sewage pipes busting, basically the water breaking. Do you have any shut-off valves or anything in place so that if there is a rupture, that you can actually shut off that main? Or are we just wide open to, if we get an earthquake, well, they're going to have to come out, they're going to have to, dig it out and, seal the pipe there.
Well, the answer to that is very comprehensive, and I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Stevenson and maybe Mr. Ahrens.
Yeah, and you're right. There's the answer is yes and yes, but it is complex. And by the way, I'd be very, very happy to talk to you about details of any of the questions that you have. I'm open to, if you want to give me a call or contact me. But sort of the short answer is, yeah, we have what we call isolation valves all throughout the system. We have thousands of them. And you see them as you drive around. You see the little 8 to 12 inch diameter metal plates that are in the roadway.
Yes.
These all allow us to access the valves that are buried underground that are in line with the water system and the water mains. We also have, in certain instances, particularly associated with our storage facilities, we have valves that are automated and that can be operated remotely, and so we can kind of control a major water loss and so forth that way. And then there's a lot of other control systems throughout our service area on different facilities, pump stations and regulators and so forth. But so we have the ability to isolate water mains. But when the big earthquake occurs, we don't have 10,000 employees to go around shutting off water mains.
Right.
So there will be cases where a water main remains broken for some time before someone can get to it and shut it off and start to address the issue that's there. A big part of the program that Vice President Sethi mentioned at ACWD has to do with hardening our system. It's not really the right word, but hardening our system, modifying our system so that when the big earthquake does happen, because it will, and it will be very significant, and it'll have significant impacts on the water system and of course all other utilities. When it does happen, our objective is to make the overall time required to restore service to our customers as short as we can make it. And so, so that's the overall end game that we're working toward. We have a long way to go. As Director Sethi pointed out, we have over 900 miles of pipeline, and that's just pipeline. We've got a whole lot of other infrastructure in the ground and around our service area, and it all has to be factored into the overall program. So the answer is yes and yes, and a few more yeses.
Okay.
And I'd be very happy to talk to you about that stuff in as much detail as you'd like.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I have one more, I guess, that I wanted to bring up. You said something about that you felt that there was, or someone stated, and forgive me, I forgot who, but stated something about that, oh, we are in a real big drought scenario right now. We're pretty much dry. I was listening in on a committee meeting around December 9th, 10th, I believe. And they were very enthusiastic about all the water that's coming into our ponds. Our groundwater level is increasing. They're very optimistic. Now, someone just said that now we're that we are in a real deep drought and we're really thin on water. So I'm trying to correlate the committee meeting and this meeting here saying, oh, we're in a big drought. But these guys are like, hey, our percolating ponds are up, everything, you know, our groundwater is going up, everything. They look and they're really looking really good. Went up 10 feet, whatever the deal was.
Yeah.
Now we're in this. Now we're in a severe drought now.
Right. Yeah, it's another great question. You are really tuned in, which is fantastic. We love engaged customers. So again, it's kind of complicated. The answer is yes and yes. So what was referenced in that prior committee discussion had to do with how we were capturing the water runoff from our watershed that followed those big rains. Remember, we had significant rainfall in November and then in December also. I mean, a lot of rain through atmospheric rivers that came through the system. And so we tried to ensure that we were capturing every drop of that water that we could, because a big part of our water supply is that local groundwater basin. We do have a recharge program. We capture that water runoff, as much of that runoff as we can, because that is a big part of our water supply. So those rain events were really important, and they did help. And they didn't just help us, but they helped other water systems throughout the state, including those that we rely on for imported water supply. The San Francisco Hetch Hetchy system received a whole lot of precipitation, rainfall, and snow, and they're actually in fairly good shape from a drought standpoint. They are still under certain curtailment orders from the state, and there are other things that limit what water they can provide to us. But from a hydrology standpoint, they're in much better shape than they were before. The state water project's a little bit different story. And again, I'd be super happy to talk to you about this.
Okay.
But the state water project is a little bit different. No matter the system, but in particular the state water project, the last 2 years have been drought years, and they've been, in fact, the driest 2-year period on record. So it's really been, it's been tough. And really every year that goes by that there's not significant precipitation to replenish the storage in the state, then you dig a deeper and deeper hole, right? The state needs a lot more precipitation over a long period of time sustained to refill the hole. And so what we saw in November, December was some level of refilling of the hole, but the hole that we're in, the deficit that we're in as a state, was very significant. And so, record low levels. So those storm systems did not refill the hole or resolve the drought. They were very important in terms of alleviating certain situations, including for us. And again, we really maximized what we could do with that water. But the state overall is still in a pretty significant hole. Mr. Wunderlich reported on this slide that you're seeing here, kind of a snapshot. And as of yesterday, we had a 0% allocation from that state water project, and that's 40% of our supply. So that's, that's a big deal when you lose, that reliable water supply that serves as 40% of your portfolio. And we were just drawing on storage, and you can't draw on storage forever.
Right.
So these rainfall events and precipitation has been very helpful. It has actually allowed the state to increase our allocation from 0% now to 15%. We don't know how long that will last. There's a lot that goes into that. But things are definitely better, and they're looking up, but we are definitely still in a drought.
Okay. One more question, I think, and that is, you keep saying state has, I don't mean that derogatory. I just mean the state does mandate to you, the state tells you what to do, 15% allocations. Do you ever come back to state like, hey, we can't do this? Do you, in other words, gain control of your?
Yeah, well, we work with the state all the time. Just last week, I was in a meeting with the secretaries of natural resources and others, where as part of a water agency coalition, essentially, we're a member of several. And really our message to the state was, one size fits all sorts of mandates don't really work well for the state. And there are lots of other solutions that we ask the state to consider. And so we're in a process right now of providing additional information to the administration and to the various agencies involved in water supply throughout the state. So we're not the only one, but yes, we do provide feedback to the state, but they do control the state system and operate it. But as Director Sethi pointed out, we're one of the, in fact, we were the first contractor on the state water project. And so we've been working with the state for many, many years. And so, it's just part of the business, but yes, we're very involved.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for answering all my questions.
Great questions. And that goes for questions that everybody submitted. We really appreciate your interest in this and your engagement.
Mr. Stevenson, as the fill-in chair for the meeting at this point, are there any other staff presentations to be made?
That is all that staff has to present. If there are no further questions, then we could adjourn.
Are there any last-minute questions or comments from the public?
No.
I'll make one call from a board member.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I appreciate the public coming in tonight. But I also like to remind everybody it really pretty much hasn't rained in January. So while December was great, January is showing to be really, really bad. So let's keep our fingers crossed for February and March, and we'll see maybe you again in February. And if we can get a good February and March, well, our situation hopefully will be better. Or, it's not horrible. And but I do appreciate everybody and their questions they asked tonight. One thing I don't think we mentioned tonight, Paul, was we have hardened all of our Hayward Faults major pipeline crossings. That was a significant amount of money spent, but that's done. So the stuff we're doing now, we've already done those. Now, for instance, the main replacement we're doing in Alvarado Niles is a spine main through Union City, which is vital for this portion of the city and our system. But the crossings, the main pipeline crossings were done, and Mr. Stevenson can correct me, several years ago now.
That's right. There are 17 major crossings of the Hayward Fault, large diameter pipelines, things that are critical to connect parts of our system and so forth. And those were all retrofit and what we could say hardened, with some additional redundancy added in terms of temporary bypass provisions and so forth. I will say though that there are lots and lots of small diameter mains, 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch mains that cross the Hayward Fault that we haven't hardened. We expect that there'll be problems with those mains, but they're far less significant in terms of keeping our system in operation than the very large diameter pipelines and transmission mains that we have retrofitted. And as you point out, we're engaged in other projects right now to also similarly harden and provide greater resiliency to other what we call backbone mains or spine mains in our system, to ensure that they will take as little time as possible to bring back into service in the event of a seismic event.
Director Wong, do you have any final thoughts?
No, just want to thank our customers for coming to this meeting. We always enjoy having conversation and questions and interest from our customers. We do need your input to make our decision in terms of rate increases. So thank you for taking the time. And if I could put in a plug, come to the actual hearing in February. We really want to hear your thought on the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other meeting before or business before the board, if it's appropriate, Mr. Stevenson, I'm going to call an adjournment here.
That is appropriate.
Okay, I've got my gavel out. We're adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Bye.
evening,
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.